Proper day to everybody. So yeah, I'm wearing a Bob Ross shirt here. No such thing as mistakes, just happy accidents. And actually, he died right before I was born, which makes sense because a happy accident is what my parents called me. Yeah, you know, there's a lot of jokes about like families and familial relationships, and my family, there was a lot of mental illness in my family as well. We were all, you know, all pretty crazy, especially my grandfather. Like, he used to go around and he was in a wheelchair and he made these jokes like he was like missing a leg and missing one of his arms, and he made these jokes about how he called all of his body parts different names, and he was like, oh, I called my left hand handy, and okay, Grandpa, or, you know, my right ear is eerie, and then my left foot is footy, right? And then one day he says to us, but you know why I call my dick useful? Because it always comes in handy. And I remember as a kid as well with my grandfather, when he was up there with, like, he was outside and he was sitting there and he was drinking some whiskey and smoking a cigar, and I said to him, hey, Grandpa, can I try some of that? And he looks at me and says, I don't know, son, can your penis touch your asshole? And I was like, of course not. And then he looks at me and says, well, then in that case, you're not old enough. And I was like, all right, whatever. So the next day I went back, or the next morning rather, I was eating some cookies and there was the last cookie and I grabbed it before he did, and he asked me if we could split it and he could have some of it. And I looked at him and I said, I don't know, Grandpa, can your penis touch your asshole? And he confidently says, of course it can. And I said, well, then go fuck yourself. And then he actually was a bus driver, even though he was missing one leg. He was, you know, you can do that. My grandma as well, she was partly disabled, so she just crossed her legs and just drove with her one leg. My grandfather, he actually drove buses right until the day he died. And when he did die, he passed away very peacefully in his sleep, and I used to always think, you know, that would be such a nice way to die. I would want to die like that, you know, nice and peacefully, just, not screaming in terror like all of his passengers. And then, you know, when we were younger too, my grandfather also one time got us kicked out of a restaurant as well, because we were all sitting at a table with the extended family, and I think my cousin was a construction worker and my uncle was a police officer, and my grandpa, I think he had ADHD, so he didn't really like pay attention to the conversation very much. And at one point, like, my cousin was talking about someone being paid under the table, and then later on, my uncle, who's a police officer, was talking about like somebody doing a breathalyzer test and how they blew under. And then my grandmother like dropped her fork at one point, and she was underneath the table, and when she got up, my grandfather just punched the guy in the face, because I guess he thought that my grandmother was giving someone a blowjob under the table. And then, let's see, I got a few more here. So when my parents were growing up, there was another time where my grandfather and my grandmother, they took us home, and they made us venison, but they didn't tell us what meat it was, and they wanted it to be a surprise. So they tried to make us guess, and eventually they wouldn't seem to. We never figured out what it was, and we asked for a hint, and then my grandfather says, it's what Grandma calls me sometime, and my sister drops her fork and screams, don't eat it, it's an asshole. And yeah, but you know, both of my grandparents are passed away now, but growing up we were still a tight-knit family as well, and you know, it was always nice to just have the family around and be close like that. But I'm trying to move on to a different subject here, but so I used to date this girl back when I was in high school, and I actually learned a lot about anatomy from dating her, because I learned that like if you shower your hair every single day, and then you miss a day, your hair gets really, really greasy the next day. And I learned from dating her that like vaginas are actually supposed to be self-cleaning, and they're very acidic, because she used to use soap in there, so her pussy kind of smelled like vinegar. And then, you know, when we were just finishing high school, going off to college, and she dumped me like on our anniversary of all days too, and I gotta say, it really left a sour taste in my mouth. But you know what else too? Years later, she actually had a kid, I found out, and apparently she didn't want to she didn't have the test to see if the kid she didn't want to know if it was a boy or a girl or whatever. She wanted to be a total surprise, but I heard from her family that everyone was really surprised when a pickle came flying out. But you know what? They were a Jewish family, so at least it was kosher. Yeah, maybe just a couple. I saw the light come on. I also actually have, like I said, there's a lot of mental illness running in my family. And I have a lot of diagnosed not mental, but physical conditions, but some may say I'm an overachiever. But there's actually also a test, when I grew up, I dated lots of guys and lots of girls. I didn't really know if I was gay or straight or whatever, but I actually found out that there's a test they can do to see if you're actually bisexual. And I actually went and I got the test and I did the test, and then the doctor came in and said, hey, you know what, it turns out you actually are bipolar. Yeah, and then I guess the last one is that I've got this very weird disease I was born with where my spinal cord did not grow properly at all, so it's really misshapen. And because of the compression, it can kind of grow and shrink, and it can grow and shrink about 2 inches. And I mean, I know there's not a lot of ladies here, but let me tell you, ladies, that's not my only body part that grows and shrinks 2 inches. All right, thank you very much.
Let's give it up again for Adam. I know Adam has just started coming around the comedy scene, and he's getting his stuff going. I saw him at the Judge getting feedback, and yeah, good job, kid. I don't know where I'm a mom of 2. Okay, the next person. Actually, I'll tell you guys one joke before I call it the next person. I can be nihilistic sometimes, like all the time, and it can be a bit exhausting. So I've been trying to move from being a passive nihilist to being an active nihilist, but it's difficult because my moral compass is pointless. Period. Okay, let's call up your next comedian. He is, a Hamilton homie. He puts on shows here, I think monthly, called Black Friday, and he's a great comedian. He's great at his craft, and I'm excited to see his set. Let's welcome Yoel to the stage.
What's going on,